Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ben, and I'm with the Inland Coalition on Aging. We're excited to come to you today with a very important topic of housing. But first, the Inland Coalition is a coalition of organizations in the Inland Empire that serve older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers. And we're here to talk about the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging, but specifically the housing goal that we've set up. Housing is one of the top needs that's been identified through various stakeholder groups, various meetings, various needs assessments, various information that reports that we've read. And so today we have with us phenomenal subject matter experts that are going to talk to you, tell us a little bit more about the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging and specifically our housing goals. So with us today, I have Tanya Torno. She's the Deputy Director of the Riverside County Housing and Workforce Solutions Department. Thank you, Tanya, for joining us. Also with us is Elizabeth Bogumil. She's a consultant for the Inland Coalition on Aging, again, helping us to develop the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. So excited to have you both with us. I'm going to ask you a few questions about housing, the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with you, Tanya. Tell us about who you are and, yeah, a little bit about you, please.
Of course. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Ben, for the invitation. Excited to be here. I serve as a deputy director with Riverside County's Housing and Workforce Solutions Department, and in that role or in that capacity, directly support our homeless continuum of care, where I have the great privilege of working together with cities, homeless assistance providers, and other community-based organizations to address homelessness in the region.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So I'm Elizabeth Bogomil. I've been a consultant for the Master Plan for Aging for the Inland Empire last two and a half years, so it's been a while. And I help conduct the needs assessment. And the needs assessment can be found online on our website to look at the entirety of it. And within that needs assessment, we did speak to quite a few individuals about their experiences with housing. And so that's what I'll be talking to y'all about today.
Thank you. So, housing. Why was housing so important to be included in the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging? Tanya, why was housing included, and why is it important here in the Inland Empire?
Of course, housing was included as a domain and as a top domain because it is one of the main resources seniors need, and I'm saddened to say is probably one of the most needed resources that seniors are challenged with. Many of our seniors are on a fixed income and need access to an affordable home. They're often struggling trying to find housing within their budget. And in California, this is an even harsher reality given that the average cost to rent is $1,900, which makes it nearly impossible for seniors who are on a fixed income and maybe only receive Social Security to afford housing. And while affordability is one piece of the puzzle, we're learning through our discussions in reviewing the Inland Empire's Master Plan on Aging that seniors also need to find the right home, one that can accommodate their disabilities and their caregivers who help watch over them and coordinate their daily care. It also, needs to complement and include access to public transit, grocery stores, and other services and systems like healthcare, which seniors access regularly. And so, to that end, the Inland Empire's master plan really focuses on how we can increase development of affordable housing where seniors can pay 30% of their income towards rent, which will leave them with enough resources to pay for other essentials, but also looks at how we can partner and scale board and care facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and other shared and supportive housing for seniors across our Inland Empire. Because we recognize that each person's needs are so uniquely different.
Thank you, Tanya. When we think of housing, we typically think of location and cost, and location seems to be so important, right? Is it close to grocery stores? Is it close to schools? Is it close to employment? So that's something we need to consider also, given that the vastness of our two county areas. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. And then, Elizabeth, tell us what are some of the initial findings?
So, just so we have a context of how we came across these findings, as part of the preliminary planning for the MPA, we conducted a needs assessment, which means that we held several focus groups with diverse people and populations. So, we spoke with individuals who are English and Spanish speaking caregivers, LGBTQIA individuals, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, veterans, unhoused and low income individuals, and those living in particularly rural areas, those who are disabled. And then we're also able to procure a survey of experiences of tribal elders within the regional communities. So that's where all of this information is being drawn from. So for findings for housing, we could divide it into two main categories. There were similarities amongst those that we spoke with, and then there were differences typically divided up by subpopulation. So the first theme, based on similarities, there were four key findings. The first key one was housing is healthcare. And this came up a lot in the discussion. Individuals need a safe place to sleep at night, to store medication, especially if it's refrigeratable, to convalesce if that's needed, and also a stable location to receive healthcare and social service resources, like a stabilized address. And to pull in a quote of somebody we spoke with, we need an advocate for healthcare and housing. Regarding housing, they make you go through so many hoops for the application, deposit, clearance for finances. These poor people, when they go through senior housing, they're overwhelmed. And so one of the next themes is the types of housing. So there was a big desire for multi-generational housing, for seeking out roommates that were safe solutions, not unknown roommates, but people that they could connect with and rely on, to diffuse costs, but also to rely on one another and check in with each other. There was a need to downsize or right-size housing for the purposes of ease of upkeep and to be closer to resources, particularly like Ben had mentioned and Tanya, the need to be close to medical and groceries, and to be able to access those, especially if driving is not something that they're able to continue on with. Um, to pull in a quote of somebody else we spoke with, if we stay in California, we won't be able to stay in this area. This was an individual who was living in a more rural area, but an apartment, because it's too difficult with lack of transportation. They didn't drive and they didn't have a reliable bus service in their area. So they were trying to figure out how to get to medical and groceries. Next was a long waiting list for private and public housing facilities in Section 8. This is true everywhere in California and across the US. So this is a very much known issue. And then we have two other themes. The next one being upkeep, which were challenges finding affordable, trustworthy contractors and handy people that individuals could rely on that wouldn't take advantage. And next were costs. So costs are kind of woven in through this whole discussion, but there were challenges of a fixed income and increase in cost of rent and HOA too. So even if you bought your place, the HOA could increase and that could be prohibitive to some aging adults. Additionally, increases in insurance, particularly fire insurance in some areas, utilities with the AC and electrical increases, and then the cost of upkeep as well. And then next related to cost was rent-controlled senior housing is still pretty expensive, like Tanya had brought up for so many. And so it takes a massive proportion of a Social Security check to be able to pay rent. And the next set of themes that we found differed across the different subpopulations that we spoke with. So generally, those who lived in very rural areas, because Riverside and San Bernardino counties do have very rural areas, faced distinct and different housing challenges from those who lived in more urban areas. So their housing challenges were quite different. Next, we have homelessness. There was a significant concern from a lot of individuals that we spoke with about seeing an increase of unhoused older adults, and a fear that that could be them soon, with costs and with precarity of housing. Additionally, for rural and low-income individuals, there were feelings of being precariously close to homelessness, and particularly with that group, they felt like they were on the cusp, or living in an RV. Some people were living in RVs in that case, so they had a home, but it was a little different type of a home. And next, for unhoused individuals that we spoke with, because we did have the opportunity to speak to several unhoused individuals, there were challenges navigating the bureaucracy to finding long-term housing or care facilities, even once Section 8 vouchers were secured. So we spoke to several who had secured them. They were going around to rentals, trying to figure out who would accept it, and then also how they could stay within the range of access to their social support facilities and their social services and their community that they established in their healthcare facilities. So figuring out how to align all of those stars together to find optimal living situation was a challenge. We also spoke with people who were living in rentals, English-speaking informal caregivers, those who lived in rural communities, and Native Americans spoke about the lack of rental upkeep by owners, but also an anxiety about speaking with the owner that they were renting from about this upkeep because they didn't want to lose their housing, or they didn't want that precarity of being thought of as a bad tenant. And next, with rural, low-income, and LGBTQIA individuals we spoke with, particularly near some of the desirable areas to vacation in San Bernardino and Riverside counties, there were issues with Airbnbs driving up rental cost. Not just cost of rental, but like upkeep cost as well, because some of the people doing upkeep would prefer to have contracts with the Airbnbs rather than individuals who just needed upkeep. And with unhoused and English-speaking informal caregivers, um, there were issues finding affordable housing that will accept Section 8 vouchers. This may have to just do with location, but it was very similar to the unhoused individuals that we spoke with. And then we also spoke with homeowners. So those in rural and low-income communities face challenges securing home loans, particularly home loans that were on Indian lease land, because banks just didn't know how to navigate that or were feeling unsure about it. And in our region, there is quite a lot of land that is Indian lease, so that was a challenge they were facing. With African American individuals and Spanish-speaking informal caregivers, they were unsure about understanding how reverse mortgages worked, and had an interest to gain more education about how they functioned and whether or not that was a right match for them. And then finally, African American and LGBTQIA individuals talked about the high cost associated with downsizing. So individuals did want to downsize or right size their house, but sometimes they weren't able to financially do it because of the cost of rent, or needing to wait for their house to sell before they could figure out their next steps. So these were some of the challenges and similarities and differences amongst all the groups that we spoke with.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was very comprehensive, and I appreciate the fact that we went broad and went out to the rural areas. We were in the all areas of the county to really uh, to learn what the housing barriers were. And it's interesting. It's not just um, finding housing, but keeping housing, right? That's also important. So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. So a lot of information was gathered through these stakeholder groups. A lot of input was provided. What are the recommendations that came out of all that?
Yeah, so as part of this process to procure these recommendations, we presented the needs assessment findings to our advisory board, which is made up of community stakeholders and service providers within the regions. And from there, the board met and discussed and kind of distilled down 17 recommendations for housing. The exhaustive list of the recommendations can be found in our needs assessment at inlandaging.org. So visit that and you can see all 17. But generally, they were divided into two categories. The first one was implementation, and those are recommendations surrounding and focused on tangible actions to be taken and programs to be created. And then we also had advocacy, and those were recommendations focused on both policy advocacy and community engagement advocacy to promote existing programs or encourage funding or promotion of new programs. And so after we narrowed down these 17 recommendations, we now have working groups, particularly one on housing. They've been meeting to narrow down those recommendations for both feasibility and sustainability. So what are we able to do? And then what's sustainable over the course of this project? And the housing element of the MPA will have 2 strategic areas, each with 3 objectives. So we're working on specific aims to move from a plan into action, as well as identifying leads and partners there. And I believe this will be presented at our September conference, right?
Yes. Very exciting work. Yes. And looking forward to the conference to bring everybody together and share where we're at right now and where we're going. Very exciting. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. Last, Tanya, I want to ask you a question. What are you most excited about? We've heard all the stakeholder input and the recommendations. What are you excited about that might be included in the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging going forward?
Well, I think what I am most excited about is that through this process, we have really done a good job at getting input from a variety of different stakeholders, which has included seniors who have lived experience and are today, facing the challenges that we've talked about, which Elizabeth just talked about, are on a fixed income and may have been a long-term tenant at a rental and just received a notice, a rent increase notice, and is challenged with, where do I go next? And um, the reality is that the Inland Empire is one of the fastest growing counties, if not the fastest growing county or region across the nation. And so we need to do more. And I am excited that through this process, we are creating greater awareness. We are providing the community with education, and my hope is that we will continue to strengthen how counties and cities come together to build more affordable housing and how they work together with community-based organizations and seniors to do more, right? To provide more housing, to provide the supportive services that are needed so that we're not only helping seniors get the housing that they need, but then to your point, that we're helping them maintain that housing for as long as they need it. And so again, from my perspective, this plan provides an educational tool and a roadmap, right? We have solutions, and each community, each region can use this roadmap to build out the resources that seniors need. And so aside from this momentum, I just think it's really, really important that this plan remains an active document and that we really take advantage of the feedback, and certainly look at how we scale the solutions to work. I think what I would want those listening to this call to also learn, because we've talked a lot about the different gaps that exist and we talked about some of the solutions that are being proposed, but you should also know that there is already good work that is happening on the ground, and through our different work groups and the discussions that we're having, it's very, very apparent that we have good, sound organizations that are going to continue on this fight to do more. And we're already beginning to exchange best practices and look at how we can mirror things happening in certain cities to other, parts in the region. And so I'm thankful because personally it has served as a reminder that none of us are alone. We are stronger when we work together. And in the center of it all, seniors are a part of the planning process, which is critical because we need to continue to have them guide our next steps, because they are the key in all of this. So my hope is that one day we will have um, a region that does not have to worry about anyone entering homelessness. But the reality is, too many are challenged with that today. And so that's why this piece is so critical, and that's why I'm excited to be at the table.
Thank you, Tanya. Yes, I'm very excited to where we're at, but I'm also very excited of where we're going. This is just the beginning. The Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging is going to be our roadmap, our blueprint, right? That we can share with elected officials, department leadership, from healthcare to social services to housing providers to caregiver agencies, disability agencies, and then we can share that information and they can use that to guide their services. And hopefully all of this work will really end with what our vision is here at the Inland Coalition on Aging, which is to see a community where older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers can age well. And that's something that we all need, right? A community in an empire where there's enough housing, where there's accessible housing, where there's affordable housing, and programs and services to support people through their continuum, through their aging process too, right? To help people stay at home for as long as possible. So thank you so much, both of you, for your work. I know it's been a long time, 2 years, and we're almost there. We're getting closer, but I thank you for not only for your dedication and commitment to this Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging, but also for sharing your expertise as a subject matter expert, as a consultant, as a person dedicated to this in your work. So thank you very much. I do want to end and just thank also the stakeholders who have been a part of this process and the community, the subcommittees and the committees and the board of the Inland Coalition on Aging. It definitely is an effort. It is an Inland Empire effort, and so we thank both counties, everybody that's involved with this. I do want to point you to our inlandaging.org website if you want more information on the Inland Coalition on Aging, on the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging, and how you can get involved as a community member, as a professional. We welcome your participation. You can sign up to continue to receive emails and information. We look forward to next month's topic. You don't want to miss it. We're going to continue these conversations and bring you up to speed where we're at. We welcome you to join us. And again, thank you for helping us to make an Inland Empire where everybody can age well. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll see everybody next time.